there is such a huge gap between my games. Like I was playing games the entire time, but there's like there's a huge gap where I stopped having interesting stories about why the games mean something, and I'm just like 17 years, Liz. 17 years.
That's okay. My number one is Candy Crush.
Oh God, is that really true?
No. Oh, that said.
This video is canceled. we're not doing this. I need you to meet me halfway, Liz, and you're not meeting me at all.
All right. So, hey, gamers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire, and I'm here with Mike Kelley from the One Stop Shop. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing great. Video games.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about video games because I on a lark decided to publish my very first game review, like video game review, on my board game channel.
And you've inspired me to do the same. I'm gonna review It Takes Two, at least for our Patreon supporters. I'm not sure if it'll be on the regular channel.
Yes. All right. So we're going back to video games and making some trouble with them. It doesn't mean that we're abandoning board games, far from it, but video games are part of both of our lives. I would say part of our formative experiences.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I was into RPGs at a very young age, like watching my older brothers play them and going to hobby stores and just sitting down and like reading for hours until they chased me out. But I was definitely still playing Atari, Sega Master System, NES, Nintendo Entertainment System, very young, like whenever those came out, like probably when I was 5 or something, or 6. Yeah, I don't know the exact years, but it's been a long time.
Yeah, one of my mom, for better or for worse, one year my brother and I got Game Boys for Christmas. It's a good Christmas.
That is a good Christmas. You know what I used to do, Liz? I only did this a few times, and hopefully my mom never watches this. So my mom would, at some point, she started letting us like give her Christmas lists, and it was all video games, like literally nothing but video games until I was at least like, because I didn't get heavily into board games until I started working at a board game shop in like 15, 16 years old. So until then, it was all video games for me and some RPGs. And yeah, so one year, I think it was only 1 year I did this. I figured out where she was like hiding the video games. There's an embarrassing story. I realized I'm going to sound like a horrible person. I was a horrible person.
Children are horrible. It's okay.
Teenagers are horrible people. So I found out where it was. I took the video game that would be mine like a week before Christmas, played it at night when she wouldn't be able to like see or notice, beat the entire game. And then when she gave it to me, I was like, oh, I don't want this. Because I already played the game.
Way to ruin your own Christmas.
I have no idea what game it was either. I don't think it was very good, but oh my God.
Oh my God. I'm already we haven't even got to the real kernel of this video yet. It's already worth it. Well, okay, I'll trade a sin for a sin. The worst thing I've ever done in my life, and actually, if you look back over a lifetime, this isn't that bad, but it was really bad at the time. And I actually still really feel bad about it. It was a really asshole thing to do, and I feel really bad.
Okay.
So, my little brother and I, actually, a lot of my fond memories of him are us playing video games together. And like, he would typically be the one who like did the moving around, and I would remember what people had said and like help him solve stuff.
Nice.
So it was nice. But, we got Mystic Quest. Yes. And there's this boss that we worked so hard to beat because we didn't know how to grind yet because we were little kids. But James did something to me. I don't know what he did. I was so mad. I deleted that game file. And it was wrong. See, it was a huge sin. Like, I still feel bad about it. Like, on Judgment Day, like, that will be the biggest thing that, like, God confronts you with.
So I have another one. This is not a sim, but this is a traumatic video game experience related to save files. So we, do you remember the days, Liz? Did you used to rent video games from like?
Oh yeah, this is actually going to come up in my list.
Yeah, yes. And like that's how we didn't have a ton of money. I was raised by a single mother who didn't graduate from college and was working like double jobs and all that kind of stuff. Like we would like rent the N64, or rent like the systems that we couldn't buy. Which is why there are some gaps in my video game like knowledge, because that's until I got my own money, I couldn't do that stuff. But yeah, anyway, long story short, Sega Genesis Shining Force, which nearly made my list but didn't. which is a tactical strategy game, like turn-based. Great game. We got it and we rented it, and I was playing it for hours. And I saved my game because I had to go to bed. It was probably like midnight, which was very late for me. And I was like, oh my gosh. I go the next day to pick up where I left off. It was a bad cartridge. The save was gone. I cried, Liz. I cried so hard that I would never get to end. And that same day, I tried to beat Shining Force in one sitting. I was like, I don't need to save. I don't need to save. I'll just beat this whole game. I'll beat this whole game in one sitting. I'll make it. At like 2 a.m., my mom comes in yelling at me. She's like, what are you doing? And I was like, no, Mom, you can't stop. If I stop, and I like tried to leave the game on and she wouldn't let me. And it was years before I finally beat Shining Force in the real way. Like before I finally got my own copy of that game. Oof.
I bet it was a sweet victory once you got there, though.
Oh my gosh. When I defeated, I think it's Dark Force and Shining Force. When I defeated Dark Force with the Lightbringer or whatever the heck that sword was called. Yeah. Got the android character. Didn't use yogurt because he sucks. You Shining Force fans, you know what I'm talking about.
So those of you who have looked at the title of this and clicked in will know this is a list of our top 5 most formative video games. And I had a hard time making this list, but it was easier than making a list of best video games because I think that's actually a less interesting list.
I don't know if it would have been, it might have been easier for me to do best, but this was more, like you said, way more interesting. I had to dig deep into like my past, although I do have one that's pretty recent, but it's formative in a very different way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Most of my formative ones are pretty old, which.
Yes. No, mine too.
Now I'm old, as the Super Bowl halftime show has taught me.
Oh, I didn't watch that, but I'm also old.
It was like, all the music is from my youth. Oh, oops.
Well, so, I just turned 40 2 months ago, Liz. So I've been video gaming for 35 years.
That's as long as I've been alive.
Yeah, I know I have a few years on you, so I figure at least a couple of mine might be before your time of video gaming.
I finally reached the point in my career where I can tell my Latin students that I've been doing Latin for longer than they've been alive, and it's great.
Yes, I love that. Power.
You will never Latin better than me. Yes, they will. I hope they will, actually.
Well, sure. That's the dream, right? For them to Latin harder than you Latin.
Exactly.
So Liz, I was curious, like, because I know mine. What was sort of your history of like consoles and such, or does that go into your list? Like, do you want to wait until we do the list?
No. We actually had a lot of game consoles in the house. So what's really interesting though is that my history is spotty in terms of which consoles I had on my own and which ones I had to share.
Yes.
Like my brother and I, it was for both of us more or less. We had a Nintendo, we had a Super Nintendo. By the time you get into like the GameCube years, it's really more for my brother. And I kind of dropped off for a while. But then when I went to college, I asked for an N64 around my birthday, like right around then. And so I had an N64 in college, and a couple of my friends had a GameCube that we used to play in like the dorm. And then the other console of my youth was PlayStation. So my brother and I played a lot of PlayStation games. Xbox, no. Sega, no. We had a Game Gear in the house at one point. But I'm still a Nintendo and PlayStation person to this day. Like if you go in my living room now, Switch, PlayStation.
Well, to be fair, there is no more Sega Genesis or any kind of Sega system, so you can't really be Team Sega anymore.
Although, my boyfriend has a Raspberry Pi and is absolutely crazy about it.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So, yeah, there's like retro games going in the house a lot.
Oh yeah.
One of the reasons I like the Switch is he can have the TV and I can just take it. And
oh yeah, it's the best.
Go do my thing.
Yeah. So we had like Atari and a few other like very early things. Like what was the? I didn't play these much because this was kind of like my older brothers. But what was like the computer one? The Commodore 64. We had one of those. Yeah. I used to do like DOS gaming for a while, like in floppy disks and all that stuff. But mainly I was a Sega guy for like a really long time. I would always catch up with the Nintendo system like a little bit later. Yeah. So we had a Master System, and then we eventually got an NES. And then we had a Genesis for forever and really only got the Super Nintendo fairly late in its life cycle. And then, God, Liz, I had a Sega CD. I had a Sega Saturn. I had a Sega Dreamcast. Oh, I was deep into Sega, but I did have an N64. I had a GameCube. Actually, I think I borrowed a GameCube from my friend and rented it. I don't think I ever owned a GameCube. And we had for a while. I went through all the PlayStations 1, 2, 3, 4, and I got a 5 now, luckily somehow, thanks to Discord help. And then Xbox is like my main blind spot these days because I do have a Switch.
Yeah.
And also I never really did much handheld. I had a Game Boy Advance, but I think I was the only, and actually I had a DS for a little while, but I never did much handheld. I never had a Game Gear. And yeah, the only Xbox I've owned is at a 360. And I got like a super cheap one, like years after it was already out, just to play a few exclusive games. And that's all I did with it. So yeah, I was pretty much Sega, and then I'm mostly PlayStation for the past many years, but Nintendo's kind of stuck around pretty strong throughout that entire time. And then I do play, not as much anymore because like my hands and wrists don't do very well with mice, but I played a lot of like PC games, especially like strategy games and RPGs and stuff on that. So we'll talk about some of those. But that's my history. I'm an old man.
But think of all the hours of our lives we've spent playing video games. I think I've definitely spent more hours playing video games than board games in a lifetime.
No question. Now it has certainly been catching up the last several years because I play video games very infrequently compared to board games these days. But yes, board games have a huge deficit to make up. And I'm still playing video games pretty actively, so it's not like I'm like just not doing video games at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was your number 5 most formative video game?
Well, so I'm gonna go in chronological order, if that's okay.
Yeah,
that's kind of how I thought of it.
There's no real rules here.
So my number 5 goes into the upcoming board game Peter and I designed. That's Mega Man Adventures, because it was specifically Mega Man 2, which is still my favorite game in the series. That was, I think, 1988. I tried to look up the release dates, although that might be like a Japanese release date. I don't know. So if you don't know, this is a side scroller on the Nintendo Entertainment System, the NES, or the Famicom, right? You know what it is in Japan? Yeah. So even though I was more into the Master System and I almost picked games like Phantasy Star or Zillion. You ever heard of Zillion, Liz?
No, I know my boyfriend will have, but not me.
Yeah, so Zillion is cool. It was almost like a Metroidvania. But anyway, I'm talking about Mega Man. So Mega Man, I picked it because it was one of the first games. It's a platformer, like jumping, shooting guys, killing bosses, stealing their weapons. It's one of the first games that I like mastered and remember playing over and over and over and beating over and over and over again. Like I can still just throw down Mega Man 2 and unlike, some of the other Mega Mans I have trouble with because I never learned them that well, but I can like beat almost any of the bosses. I like still know their patterns. I can still do the Quick Man stage where I'm running past the little laser beam shooting, or no, is that Flash Man? No, it's Quick Man. It's Quick Man. Yeah. So, and that's why I jumped when Blacklist offered us the chance to design the game for it, because I love Mega Man, and Mega Man 2 is like, the first one that I remember putting tons of hours into to master and like play and beat over and over again. Most games I would beat and be done with them. Mega Man 2 was not like that. So there we go.
Oh man, that's awesome. So my number 5 on the list is number 5 because it's a game that had a big impact on me, but it's not one I've spent a ton of time playing myself. In fact, I really shouldn't have been playing it at that age. So what we had in my family was we got like our first family PC, and it had like DOS on it, if I recall. I remember like, just thinking this is an amazing thing that our family had acquired. And my mother wanted to know the full capacity of this. So she bought Wolfenstein. And she used to let me stay up late with her, like hanging out, and like she would play Wolfenstein or let me play it a little bit, and like we would see how far we could go. And I just really loved that. You know what I mean? Like I still have all these memories of like the weird, like the mutants with like the 3 arms and the, like looking for food and being like, wow, he eats turkey legs really fast, because like little, like those things are really formative.
Wow.
And I just remember realizing like, oh, this is a thing. Like this is how people can spend their time. And I was so like a little bit scared by it because I was really little. And I remember like the feeling of being like, oh yeah, I've seen this level before, and like getting excited when we hit a new one. And I just sort of feel like those primordial like memories of like kind of be partially involved in a video game early set me up to like them for a lifetime.
Yeah.
Especially because I did it like my mom was the main player. So I was like, oh, my mom and I hung out and like did Wolfenstein.
I just find everything about that hilarious. Like little baby Liz. Like, kill that Nazi, mommy, kill that Nazi. Like,
I mean,
kill up that demon. Like, not that you shouldn't be saying that, that's fine. But wow. Yeah. I don't know what the first time I like was exposed to like a sort of hyper violent game, although, Wolfenstein's graphics, it's hard to call it hyper violent, but
No, I mean,
that's a good one.
But that was like one of my earliest gaming experiences. It's just that, like I got exposed to a lot of different things early. Like I've definitely read books that were too old for me early and all that kind of stuff. But
sure,
I was with my parents and I turned out normal, I swear.
See, I was that way for movies. Especially horror movies. I was watching like horror movies that were way too old for me, like The Shining and stuff, like way too young, and loving them. I mean, covering my eyes whenever the little twins popped up because nightmare fuel. But they were, yeah. All right. So my number 4 is this actually now. I'm going to give this recency bias, which is ridiculous because it's a 1994 game, but it's in my head because it just popped up on the little Switch subscription thing that they do. So like the second it popped up, it was like, kids, sit down, you're watching me play this. Because that's like been a pastime recently. Like my kids have been watching me play role-playing games. And role-playing video games have always been the top of my like passion, because I love RPGs. I've loved anime and like manga since a fairly young age. And especially like JRPGs, Japanese role-playing games, they kind of like combine a lot of those elements,
Yeah.
So I almost picked, Phantasy Star 2 was one of my favorites. Final Fantasy 3/6, of course. Lunar Silver Star, which was a Sega CD one that I loved. But what I went with as the one that was like most kind of formative and like changing how I think of things is Earthbound, which in Japan was called Mother 2. Yeah. So amazing role-playing game, but the big thing that I picked this is that it challenged and shattered like tons of preconceptions I had for how role-playing games work, and I think was formative in me kind of thinking about like game design and how like new mechanics can be put in place, to do things the same old way. So I won't say that Earthbound did these things first, but it's the first game that I remember like noticing a lot of this stuff. Just to tell you like a few of the things that were like mind-boggling to me, having played so many of these other RPGs. Number 1, enemies were on the map and you could like walk around them, which seems like very normal now. Like I know you've been playing a lot of Pokemon Arceus, Liz, but like the idea, to like look at Pokemon versus Pokemon Arceus, it's been that long to have like enemies on the map, So Earthbound had that. It had like weird humor. I was like, wait, these games can be funny? You know what I mean? Like consistently funny. It was in a modern setting. I was like, wait, you can't have a role-playing game in a modern setting. It should be fantasy or sci-fi or weird sci-fi fantasy where like you have guns, but also knives and lasers. And like when you would get hurt, your health would roll down, but you wouldn't die yet. So if you healed fast enough, you would like still be alive. You didn't get money from killing monsters because that doesn't make any thematic sense. You would call your dad, he would give you your allowance, and that would be the money you use to buy stuff. Like so many crazy things that just like through all these things that I assumed had to be the way any RPG would work and just destroyed them. So, and I mean, it is also a top RPG for me. Like I love that game, but in terms of formative, it like really shattered my expectations and opened my world to how RPGs can be a very different than like kind of more nuanced and varied thing.
Oh, it's awesome. I love it. Yeah, you mentioned all these honorable mentions, and I have the same issue. Like, there's so many things I could mention. Things that didn't make it are like Zombies Ate My Neighbors. We used to play that with one of our babysitters. Yeah, God, that was so fun. I used to play. It's now a very questionable game now, but at the time, Sunset Riders.
Oh yeah, with I was playing that actually recently, like an emulated version of it.
Yeah, so like my dad and I used to play that together. That was fun. Final Fantasy 3/6 was also a big one for us, but it was one where I really felt like it was more my brother's game because he's the one who played it more, but it was definitely a big part of our household. But my number 4 for me in terms of things that I spent a lot of time playing is The Seventh Guest.
Oh man,
is that PC puzzle game?
It was by the same. Was it the same company that did Shadowgate? Because I played more Shadowgate and not The Seventh Guest.
I don't know. All I know is it was at my grandpa's house. So like,
it's like first person, like point and click. Like you got to find things. The same thing with there was a detective game that I used to play. Anyway, but go ahead, Liz. It's your turn.
Yeah, but it had all these puzzles. Like it had chess puzzles. Like the queen could move in all directions, and you had to like figure out where you could put the queens on each row of the chessboard so they wouldn't kill each other. There's like a little moving cans in the pantry to like undo a message. Like I really loved this game. And you know, it was at my grandparents' house. My grandfather, we just have a lot of tech heads in the family, you know. But he had a PC, and after I finished my math homework, after my grandparents picked me up from school, I would get to play. And so I played The Seventh Guest on his computer, and it had multiple discs. And I will never get over this. I was going into the final room to play the final puzzle, and the disc was bad. So I have never finished The Seventh Guest.
You know, it's a beautiful thing for any of those stories, Liz. Just go on YouTube and you can find somebody playing through the entire game and skip to like the last 10 minutes. Boom, Seventh Guest ending in your hands.
At the time, that wasn't possible. So basically, like I now think about it, it's like, oh, I've been like heartbroken for years because I never finished The Seventh Guest. I know that they have it on the iPad and stuff now, but you know, one of these days I probably need to get it. But what I'm afraid of is that I loved it so much, and that kind of like, God, it must have been late elementary, early middle school based on like the quality of my memories from this time. I don't think it was any later really. But you know, I think back on it and I'm like, would it be as good now? Would I like it as much now? And so I'm like, ooh, I don't know if I want to play it again because my memories of it are so golden.
I mean, I played through, yeah, it totally does. I played through, Shadowgate was probably the first one of those that I played because that was on NES, as well as it came from PC first. And yeah, I played through that again more recently, and it's still fun. And like, it's fun to like kind of dredge the vestiges of your memory and like kind of remember how puzzles go and stuff. But they're awkward. They need to like click on the single correct pixel sometimes. Like there's frustration points galore in those games.
That said, I do love visual novels and point and clicks on the whole. So,
well, I mean, you just had that wonderful review of Doki Doki Literature Club, which everyone should check out. Which I know is kind of the impetus for this.
Yeah, actually, I'm in the middle of finishing up Cafe Enchanté. It's one of those, I don't know how to pronounce, Otome games where you basically just like date hot guys with a story on top.
I haven't played any of those, but I should. I too would like to date hot guys.
You can have an ending with every single one of them. These games.
All right, so my number 3 is another role-playing game. But this was I know I played other ones that were Western role-playing games, but this is the one that I remember digging the most deeply into and being amazed by the most. And it kind of like got me into, you know, well before the Skyrims of the world and all that stuff. And this is Fallout 2. Fallout 2. Which if for those who don't know, Fallout 1 and 2 were isometric, like kind of third-person games. Another one that I could have picked would have been a Planescape Torment, but that came later and that was like tougher for me to get into. But yeah, Fallout 2, you were like a tribesman and you had to save your tribe at first, but then it like expands way beyond that. And, you know, all the things that Western RPGs do in an amazing way. And now everything's blended together, so it's kind of hard to tell. But at the time, like it was a stark divide, you know, like JRPG, I level up to level 20, I get the fireball spell, I go to the next dungeon, like bam, bam, bam. But Fallout 2, like if once I figure out the right like sequence of events, I could win the game in like 20 minutes. I could go straight to the Enclave and get the like power armor and boom, 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 bam, 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 activate the you know, nuclear detonation sequence, kill him, boom. And and it was like, it was mind blowing, you know, and like the dialogue trees. Most JRPGs back at that time didn't really have that much dialogue trees. Being like a moral or immoral person, I didn't have like that kind of like investment in my character. Creating my own character was still more a Western RPG. Well, that's not entirely true, I guess. It depends on the game. Like I played a lot of like wizardry and those kind of games where you would make your own characters. But yeah, so to keep it short, the story in Fallout 2, the like immersiveness, the control I had of my character, the multiple times I wanted to play it because I could make kind of a different somewhat story. Like the ending was fairly similar each time, but I could create like my own story out of it. Like majorly, again, kind of like Earthbound changed what I thought my favorite genre of games RPGs could be. And that's kind of the last RPG because I need to mention something else. So there you go. Fallout 2.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. Yeah. I didn't play any Western style RPGs until much later. But you know, my number 3 game is one that, I mean, I think a lot of people in my age brackets really love it. It's Ocarina of Time.
Oh, yes.
Oh man. So I got my N64. I did get that before I went off to college. It was already kind of an older system by then, but who cares? Still out. But yeah, I got the Ocarina of Time cartridge and I was hooked. Absolutely hooked. I was a little bit scared of the boss and stuff at first because it had been a while since I'd played video games at that time, and like because I'd played so many JRPGs in my past, like the idea of this live thing that's attacking you kind of freaked me out. I actually have traumatic memories of something. So like I had Tomb Raider. I played Tomb Raider at a friend's house when I was younger.
Oh my gosh, the original Tomb Raider was so hard to play. I think I beat it, but what a nightmare.
Prepped me for it. I didn't know what I was doing, and then like I was just getting mauled by a bear, and I just remember feeling like extremely like powerless, and it just kind of freaked me out. So I never really went back to that one. And then I never really got into Xbox because I played Halo again at a friend's house, and like I just got stuck in a corner because I didn't know how to use 2 analog sticks yet. And I just sat there getting pummeled. I just remember being miserable. So like that was not a good experience, but Ocarina of Time worked great for me.
That's another one that I'm replaying on a Switch, and it's so annoying. I'm so annoyed with it all the time. I'm like, who designed these dungeons? These are the most freaking annoying backtracking dungeons ever. Still
no, they're amazing. You have to know what you're doing. I also had a really fun experience with it because like one of my favorite playthroughs of it of all time was, again, I was in college, so I had it in my dorm room. I was so cool with my little N64. I actually sold it on to some people who are still living in the dorm when I graduated, so I like to think that it just kind of like went through time, but there were 2 guys in my dorm that I would go play Ocarina of Time with after dinner. So we'd do our homework, we'd go to dinner, and then we would like go and play Ocarina of Time. And so our link was, it was Harry, Brent, and Liz. So we had Hubliza, the file. And we had such a good time just kind of switching off and playing. And, I just have such fond memories of that game. And I think that, the story is good. Anytime I hear any of the music, or hear that hey sound, like listen, like, I know exactly what it is. Like my whole body like reacts because that game like got into my bloodstream so much. And I don't know, it's just a really rare game that can do that.
Yes. Now, Ocarina of Time was also a great, amazing game for me. Although I feel like I played more GoldenEye because that was like high school into early college for me. And yeah, it was great to just pick odd job and murder everyone because I was short and they couldn't get the headshots on me. Cheating for the win with the Magnum. Anyway, my number 2 is the last old game, and then I'm going to kind of cheat for my number 1. And this is very specific, and I doubt anybody watching has played this probably, but Tenchu 2, Birth of the Stealth Assassins. You ever heard of the Tenchu series, Liz?
No, but I love stealth stuff, so tell me about it.
Well, so the stealth was a lot of fun. So this is, as you can imagine, you're like a shinobi, a ninja, whatever you want to call it, and you are sneaking up behind people and killing them, getting cool things, and try not to be seen. If you are seen, you got to get in fights, and usually you die. Clearly we've seen that in tons of games before. Like I think I might have played Thief before I played Tenchu. Tons of games since. But here's why I picked Tenchu, and it's kind of Tenchu and Tenchu 2, but we did it more with Tenchu 2. So Tenchu 2 came out right as I was about to graduate high school. And because I was going to like be leaving my best friends, we would go over there I would go over there every day I could. And we would play Tenchu 2, and specifically Tenchu 2, and Tenchu 1 I think had this, but not as good, not as robust. Tenchu 2 had a level design system. So this is one of there are many events I can point to in my life, but this is one of the ones that I can see as kind of like formatively pushing me into game design in very minor ways. So my best friend Ben and I used to take turns designing like Tenchu levels for each other to challenge, and kind of like Mario Maker these days, I guess. Like we would try to find that balance of it's not stupid impossible, though we would just do those sometimes. It's like, hey, oh, if there's a pin in every square, you're dead. But we tried to like find like clever things. We tried to play around with like this very rudimentary, terrible AI system to like make the guards kind of do interesting things and like have paths that would like allow you to sneak by them. I remember Ben would love to like use this one old lady, and he would just put her right in the middle of the level, and she would always see me, and I would curse. And so it's not like a great game by modern standards at all. There's not what I would at all want to play, but it's the first video game I remember like heavily getting into a like game design, kind of tinkering with the game sort of mode. And it's also, like the last great times I had with those best friends before we kind of drifted apart because of college. Yeah. So yeah, that was an important one for me on a few levels.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I like the idea of it kind of pushing you. My number 1, I would say, is going to be the one that would have been the most board game adjacent. My number 2 is the game that got me through my dissertation in grad school. This is so bad, but everybody who's played it will understand. My boyfriend would leave for work and then he would come back and find me. I would be playing when he left and I would still be there playing when he came back because it was Skyrim.
Yeah. Skyrim's great.
It's such a good game. And I think what I love the most about it was the first time that I had the N64 in college, and then I didn't really have a game system for a lot of my early adult, like kind of out of my own life. You know, I went through the first several years of grad school without, and then I met my boyfriend who is a big video game person, and I was looking at like one of his magazines or something. I think maybe his like GameStop. You know, they sent the magazine out, and I saw an ad for Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. I was like, this looks so cool. I want to be a pirate. And so we got me a PlayStation 3. I was not actually technically prepared to play that game well. And I think this is something that people who are getting into video games like maybe aren't ready to expect. Nintendo does a really good job of kind of leading you into their games in a more chill way. But, you know, a lot of modern video games just expect you to be good at certain things and be able to kind of read the world in certain ways that if you're not already prepared to do that, it's just not going to work. So it took me a while.
Even 3D gaming, my wife, gamed like NES and stuff a little bit and gamed on and off every once in a while, but it's still very tough for her to play anything that has like camera control and like she's like, I can't get the camera behind me. And I'm like, this is second nature for me. And my sons have now, it's second nature for them too, you know, but not for her.
But Skyrim was the game that did that for me. Like I felt so immersed in that world and I loved being able to, so I think Skyrim also did it for me because I like to be able to sneak. So being able to be stealthy and to kill from a distance and to get things like illusion magic where you can get, you know, or like getting quiet casting so that nobody could hear your spells and then you could sneakily cast spells and people, like, oh man, like all those things just really did it for me. And I always sort of thought of video games as like the sort of tank, and even like the cover of Skyrim, you know, it's like the big barbarian guy on the front. You're like, you know, okay, like, eh. But then when I realized that I could be something else in there and I could play more of the way I wanted to play, I really got totally sucked into it. And I actually feel like maybe in future video games I'd like to see even more, like, you know, pickpocketing was such a cool skill tree, but it's not really viable for winning. And so if you wanted to go crazy on something like that, you'd have to really sacrifice something else.
Yeah.
And so I remember feeling the tension between like speccing my character in a way that would be the most fun versus what would be like actually useful. But
I was one of those guys who I maxed out crafting, made all the best armor and weapons. And it was like, oh, now the game is not fun. Why did I do this?
I did stealth 100. I got illusion magic. I learned quiet casting. And I remember I used to do like assassins, like, you know, Dark Brotherhood quests by sneaking up on people in groups and like making them fight each other to death. So I didn't even have to kill my targets.
That's awesome. That reminds me, amazing. That reminds me of Fallout 2 when I would like go over to a guy, put a grenade on like a 6-second timer, pickpocket it into his pocket, and then run away and be like, oh, good times. Chaos was enjoyed by all.
But yeah, you have to have, I think the capacity for chaos in modern gaming is so just delightful. It's one of the things that makes Breath of the Wild such a great game too.
Speaking of Breath of the Wild. So this is not formative, is a weird definition for a game that came out, 4 or 5 years ago. So I picked it though because it's important in my gaming life, because Breath of the Wild is the first game that hooked my sons into just like sitting and watching me play games, which is now like a pretty common pastime for us. Like they'll just watch me play RPGs and stuff. But it's also the first one that they both like really got into playing themselves. And now my 6-year-old, it's an amazing game just in its capacity to let you just run around and do crap. And it's great. And it's like fun. Like anything you do, anywhere you go, there's something cool to see. Anywhere and Skyrim, I love Skyrim. I love like the GTA series, but I can't show them GTA. And Skyrim, I never felt like had the life of Breath of the Wild to an extent. Like you're just walking in snow for an hour, and then you see something cool and it's great, but you're still in snow for an hour. Yeah, and it's, I mean, for better or worse, I don't know if it's good, but it's kickstarted a love of video games and classic video games for my kids. So like they've played through a lot of the Mega Mans now. They have played through like old Mario games. They're watching me play Earthbound right now. And it all started with Breath of the Wild. My 6-year-old is the bigger Zelda fan. He has, I think, 3 Zelda stuffed animals. He made his own Master Sword out of like cardboard. He has a Zelda. He has a Hylian shield. You know, and so it might be a terrible idea. Maybe I'm scarring them like down the line, but it worked out for me. It worked out for you.
Yeah, I think it's great.
So it's not formative for me, but it is the beginning of the formative years for them. And you know, that still felt like something I wanted to mention. So yeah, Breath of the Wild, 2017.
Number one.
Number one.
You know what? I think that's amazing. I think it's amazing. Also, as a teacher, it's fun to talk to you about this because, okay, I was in professional development a couple years ago, and they were like talking about, basically it was about trying to get students to do homework, which I don't even assign anymore because, but
the only homework I assign is finish the thing you didn't finish in class, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
That's about it.
So, but it was funny because she was the leader of it was like, so what do you want your students to be doing outside of class? She's like, how many of you want them to be playing video games? And I was like, hell yeah. And I raised my hand. I was the only one. And you know what? I stuck it out because that's what I did. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with it. Like, I think it's actually, depending on how you're playing, I think it's really healthy to play video games. It teaches you problem solving. It teaches you to help people depending on the kind of quests. It teaches you cooperation if you're working in a multiplayer game. Like it
teaches you to grind for 50 hours in a free-to-play game and then steal your mother's credit card information and try to buy that loot chest that you really wanted.
It's modern life. It's modern life.
But yes, I know, I agree. Like classic, we were talking about this in the beginning before the show, Liz, but I learned like I became a better reader because of role-playing game books and like video game RPGs, you know, like reading all these like long texts, you know?
When I learned what Phoenix Down was, I was like, oh, and like I knew what things like taverns were.
Yeah.
And like, you know, from an early age, because I read all this fantasy and I looked at all these like RPGs, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You know, I learned all the like revive.
Yep. Rejuvenation.
I mean, all of that is actually amazing, you know, in context learning. And I think it made me a better reader too. I was reading a lot, but text heavy games are great. I love visual novels now, which are like a fun, like weird little marriage between reading and playing a game.
Well, crap. I remember just going back, but I remember playing the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy text game. Did you ever play one of those, Liz, where like you literally just like typing in like look at door?
I did. I can never find it again. I played one about a dragon named Mar, M-A-U-R, that would hit you. I never managed. You never
played what is it called? Zork? That's like the famous one, right? Or
yeah, I never played that one. I've seen it, but like Mar was the one that I had played, and I've never seen it again. But I think I would. I really enjoyed it at the time.
Yeah, they have some frustration points too. I think visual novels are better for a similar thing, but yes.
Oh man, so my number one is another one from my childhood. It actually kind of stands in for lots of games in this series, but it's the one that I love, which is Final Fantasy Tactics.
Oh my god,
I love Final Fantasy Tactics. So I played it a ton when it was like, you know, there are games that I played or that my brother played and I watched, but Final Fantasy Tactics was one that I played. I loved it. So I played it a ton at my grandparents' house in the summers. I remember, you know, after school, I had an operation on my jaw where I couldn't go outside for a while because the sun would make it swell. It was so bad. Like, oh my God. So I basically sat and like couldn't chew food, couldn't like do anything. So I played a bunch of Final Fantasy Tactics. When I had a Vita, I actually put Final Fantasy Tactics on there and played it again. And I'm actually, you know, I should just check the PlayStation Store now because I bet I can get it again. And then
you're making me want to play it again. And I heard, good. I know some of the sequels are supposed to be great too, and I never played them. I only played the original. Dude, Liz, the storyline in Final Fantasy Tactics, the betrayal, the jealousy, the murder. It was like a great like romance novel mixed with a soap opera mixed with like medieval history. I loved it.
Also combined with it's where my obsession with like completionist stuff was born because I wanted to master all the different
gosh. Did you ever get was it like Calculomancer or something where like you could
yes.
we could like be like, oh, like, and you'd be like, all right, so let's see. Oh, all the enemies are on an even elevation. Okay, then meteor on everyone.
I loved it. I loved that. And like you started as like boring. It was like, oh, let's turn this chemist into a geomancer, into a wizard,
into a monk. I loved
a...
monk. Yes.
The monks were so good.
I mean,
oh man, I always made Ramza max out on the monk stuff so he could get through some of those nasty. Remember that one-on-one boss fight that was really horrible?
I mean, you need chakra or whatever it was to do your self healing so you could survive, man. Absolutely.
Exactly.
How do I remember this?
Because you spent a bunch of time going to Mandalia playing to see if there's any battles there and trying to.
Yes, man. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
So I love that game, but I also think that it opened me up to board games later because the tactical positioning.
Yeah.
I think the fact that that actually is one of my favorite combat styles in a video game makes it not at all surprising that I really also enjoy board gaming. And thinking about things that way.
That's a good point. For me, like I adore Final Fantasy Tactics, but I've been playing the Shining Force series, and Ogre Battle is an amazing one, and a lot of other like turn-based strategy games were probably my second favorite type of game besides role-playing games. So yes, but man, Final Fantasy Tactics, what a goat. like that would be might be maybe in my top 5 games of all time. Like if we did that opposite list, that's such a great game.
Yeah, and I mean I loved other Final Fantasies. We played Final Fantasy 7. It is great. I remember Final Fantasy 10 coming through the house. Final Fantasy 3 was a big one because we used to check it. We used to go rent it at Blockbuster and pray that our save file was still on there. And I remember like the crucial decision of like when you had to save over somebody else's file, we'd be like, okay, like, who's been doing it the longest? Do we like show mercy to like the person who has a 10-hour file versus, it was just always, it's a brutal time.
I was actually tracking recently which Final Fantasy games I played because I did miss a few, like in the main series. So I played the original NES, great game, although not great now. I played 2, which was 4. I played 6, which was, I played 3, which was 6. Yeah. I totally missed 5, which is I think the first one that had the job system. That then I thought
it was 3.
No, 3 didn't have a job system.
No,
3 had unique classes for each character. Like the one girl could draw, and Tara could do like her transformation thing, and what's his name had the tools, Edwin. Then the other one had the martial arts, like Street Fighter style. Sabin, that's right. Yes. Sabin and Edgar. I think that's right. That's amazing game. Yeah, and then I played 7. I didn't finish 8. I didn't like 8 that much. I didn't finish 9 because I was kind of out on the PlayStation at that point. 10 I loved, and then I think I didn't play any.
I never played like 13 or.
Well, I didn't play any. I didn't play 13 or 14. I didn't play any of the online ones. I played 12 a little bit. I haven't played 15. I am playing the remake of 7, which is great. I'm still behind on that.
The best thing about it though is that people have also been making the same joke for years. It's just like, which one of them is gonna finally be the final fantasy, huh?
Shut up, guys. Let's enjoy our anime romances and fireball spells,
please. But yeah, I think this is so fun just because I think that thinking about video games, I mean, I actually, one of the things that was a trigger for this for me was I was looking at the Nintendo Switch eShop, and it's like solo gaming experiences. And I was like, because all video games used to just be solo.
Yep.
But now I would actually say the multiplayer experience is what most of my students seem to prefer and gravitate towards.
Yes. Well, I think a lot of that is because many of them are playing mobile, and that tends to be a more common experience on there. Which is still, I still am very much, even when a game has a like Dark Souls. I love the Souls series. Get out of here with your hints. Get out of here with your invaders. I'm turning off the online mode. I'll look up a walkthrough if I can't find my way instead of having like somebody help me out. I do not want anybody pumping into my game. I'm playing solo. I will kill this boss by myself, or I'll get what's his name? Have you played Dark Souls, Liz? The Sun guy. Oh yeah, never mind. Okay, well yeah, I'll get the Sun Knight to help me out.
I know about but I looked at that. And, okay, so that's the other thing that's actually interesting. We'll talk about this a bit before we let it go, which is that I don't mind a little challenge in my games, but I definitely do not seek out experiences because they are hard. I mean, my life is challenging enough. I play video games to feel powerful.
Yes, I'm definitely since I started with NES games, which were like nothing but kick you in the nuts like challenge mode. I still enjoy games that are just like, especially RPGs. Like I don't necessarily want to have to grind for 5 hours, beat the boss. But yes, I do like games that are like, I must become a master of this, and I must be the best there ever was to beat it. Liz, I have some questions for you. Okay. You ready?
Yes.
There's some genres we never mentioned. I just want you to name the first game that comes into mind from your gaming past. Okay.
Ooh. Okay.
So head-to-head fighting game.
Oh, it's got to be Mortal Kombat.
Oh, really? See, I hated Mortal Kombat. I was definitely all of. Actually, I played
what? No, it's Soul Blade.
Oh, I was Soul Calibur. That's one I played the most.
And I was thinking about like, because Mortal Kombat was the first one we had, but then I was thinking about the one I'd spent the most time playing, and like, who are the characters that that's right. We played a ton of Soul Blade.
Yeah, I was always about sword games. So I played Soul Calibur and Bushido Blade. You ever played Bushido Blade?
No.
I
guarantee my brother has, but not me.
All right. How about, I think ones you didn't mention at all. So you mentioned Wolfenstein, but first person shooter.
Ooh, you know what? That was never a big thing for me until PlayStation 3, where I got Far Cry 3.
Far Cry 3 is so good. I love Far Cry 3.
I loved it. I did not think the ending was very convincing either way, but I loved playing through it.
I mean, anytime I had to like deal with my friends, I was like, whatever, let them die. I want to go take over the next outpost. For me, it would be Unreal Tournament on the PC is the one that I remember like just doing tons of play. And that was actually one that I did play multiplayer a lot, like for some reason. Like I never have played another, like I've never been a Call of Duty guy or any of that kind of stuff. You didn't name very many RPGs, Liz. What's a big RPG for you? Besides Skyrim, I guess.
Oh God. Okay. Things I spent a lot of time on. We loved Suikoden.
Oh man, I forgot about the Suikoden.
That was really good.
That's something like 108 heroes you could get, right? Or something like that.
Like that's crazy. Like you get your castle and you go find all the
the castle. I forgot about the castle building. Yes.
I'd be really happy. I played every single Dragon Age game.
Oh yeah. I still have not. I have it. I own it. I played like 5 minutes and I was like, I don't have time for this. Inquisition. I've not played Inquisition.
I really enjoyed Inquisition. But
I loved one. The first one, it was my favorite by far.
So good.
Yeah.
So good. I really like that one.
Did you do Mass Effect at all?
You know what? I have it and I've just never totally fallen in.
Mass Effect 2. Friggin' great. I heard that they have like a remake, like trilogy thing, and I heard they made Mass Effect 1 better because it was pretty rough. And Mass Effect 3, of course, had the ending debacle, but they fixed that.
It has always been true that it's harder to get me to play games in space.
No, fair enough. See, I'm slightly more sci-fi than fantasy, which I know is like bucking the trend, clearly, of board game players. And I'm much more sci-fi and fantasy versus European farming or merchant wares.
My first favorite RPG might have actually been Super Mario RPG, which I also loved.
Oh, that's a great one.
That was a good one.
And did you play Paper Mario on N64?
Yes.
That's a great game,
we like Paper Mario. Definitely, we've got multiple incarnations of Paper Mario in the house.
I've never played Origami, whatever. I just found out about it, so I'm gonna download that. My kids want to see it.
Yeah, my boyfriend's played it. I have not yet, but my boyfriend's stepson, I'll hear them talk about it.
How about sports games? Oh, come on, Liz. You must have played one Wii Sports.
Yeah, I've played Wii Sports like a couple times, I guess. I've never really been a big sports person. Just never. Like, I like to watch sports, but playing it, I'm just kind of like, eh.
I think mine was Sports Talk Football, Joe Montana 2. That's one that my brother and I played to death. And like, it would talk to you, Liz. There was a voice in the game, and it would sound, it was like a fumble on the play, 5-yard loss. It was amazing.
Have you played
any future of technology?
Any visual novels or like mystery games?
I guess my favorite of something that's along those lines would be the Phoenix Wright series. I would consider those basically visual novels. But yeah, objection. We were just talking about this in the Discord. It's funny. I've not, like, you've inspired me to get more into the like newer, like Japanese visual novels and things.
Yeah.
Because what put me off is we were talking about a Discord, and I was like, this is clearly a blind spot for me because I love these kind of games and like these experiences and other things. So why haven't I done these? So the one that somebody pushed me towards was I forget the Japanese word, but it's like When They Cry. It's like a word for cicadas in Japan. and it's
No
like this
idea.
murder mystery, and like each episode you keep on like kind of repeating time. But
That sounds interesting.
it's a super. But here's the thing: no branching, no choices. It's literally just a visual novel. Like,
Okay.
there's nothing else. So, and that didn't jive that well for me. I love Choose Your Own Adventure.
Yeah.
Way back. Like, I've loved
So-
Choose Your Own Adventure since I could read, basically. Like, some of the first books I was reading were the old like Choose Your Own Adventure books. So yeah, so hearing from you and other people about all these amazing ones that let you like pick which girl or guy you end up with, you know, or like let you get different endings like that. Sign me up, baby. But where it's just like literally like clicking a page and I'm like, well, I could just be reading like a light novel and be better.
So if you like Phoenix Wright, I actually super recommend, especially because it is now available on the Switch. The Switch has become home for all the things that were popular on the Vita, but because they're not really going to be, you know, the Vita is kind of dead now. You know, Danganronpa. Trigger.
Oh, that's the I've always wanted to play that. That's the one that's like you're all like getting killed off, right? Sort of like a battle royale
like
thing.
The high school.
Yeah, there's like an evil bear with like black and white art.
Yep.
Yeah. I have wanted to play that. You have to like figure out who like the person is each time, right? You like pick someone to kill, like kind of werewolf style or mafia style.
It's like you're all trapped in there, and the only person who's going to graduate from your messed up high school class is the person who can commit murder and get away with it. So
yeah, I've been very interested. So here's the secret. I play very little that my kids can't watch. So for example, I have both Red Dead Redemption 2 and the God of War 1998 or whichever one it is.
Right.
And I haven't played either of them almost at all because I can only play them at night. And you know what I'm doing at night, Liz. It's the same thing you're probably doing a lot of nights. Playing board games or recording them. so I barely play those at all.
But Mike, they'll be okay. I used to sit next to my mom and watch Wolfenstein, and look how I turned out. Wait, no, it's not a good recommendation.
Hey, if my kids turn out like Liz, I would be 100% happy with that.
It could be worse. It could be worse. And this doesn't even cover my movie initiations. Like one time my dad and I watched the Full Metal Jacket on Christmas Day, waiting for everybody else to wake up. When I was in high school.
One. That's a good one.
It's a Christmas movie.
My stepdad said I was too scared to watch Salem's Lot when I was 6, I think, in the basement by myself. So he paid me a $2 bill to go down and watch it, and I did it, and it was a little bit freaky. Have you ever seen Salem's Lot, Liz?
I have not.
There's a scene. So picture 6-year-old Mike in the dark. The lights had to be off. That was part of the deal. In the dark, in the basement by myself. There's a part where the main character, his little brother, gets turned into a vampire, and they can float in Salem's Lot. So he's floating outside the main character's window. And he's not saying anything. He's like all pallid and like his skin looks all messed up. And he's just scratching. Yeah, because I've read it too. And he's just scratching at the window. So just picture like little 6-year-old Mike, trauma for the rest of my life, you know, like staring at this thing. Yeah, parenting, baby, parenting.
I'm a huge chicken when it comes to movies. Like it's so bad. I just can't. I can watch if it's about demons. I'm usually okay. So like, but I like The Omen, The Exorcist. Okay. Like those are more interesting than scary, or like something like The Silence of the Lambs. I love The Silence of the Lambs. That's great. Yeah. Watch that anytime.
Have you seen Ready or Not?
No, but I don't think I want to sound. That just sounds.
No, you should. No, it's hilarious.
Okay.
It's an empowered female character who's amazing. It has demons, and excellent. And it's freaking great. You should see it. Awesome. I recommend it to everyone.
Zombies, but like things like Hostel, like no.
No. I'm not. That we call that torture porn, and that's not my jam.
No.
Saw, I kind of was able to get into a little bit of them, like Saw 1 and 2, but even that I couldn't kind of keep up with it. And I'm a huge horror fan, so me not being into it is telling.
But I did just pick up a video game called Spirit Hunter Deathmark.
Spirit Hunt. That sounds like
it's apparently you wake up with a mark on your body that indicates you're going to die horrifically if you don't figure out what to do next.
I like
so it's apparently extremely disturbing, and we're just going to find out how that goes.
You ever play Clock Tower, Liz? You ever heard of Clock Tower? This is one that was like on PlayStation was the place that I played it, the port, and it was a point-and-click adventure game like Monkey Island or Your Seventh Guest or whatever. I was about to say Seventh Continent. That's not it. But you were like this young lady trying to survive this little like demonic like small man with a giant pair of scissors, and he would cut you in half. And And like you were just like going around doing the regular point and click thing, but it's every once in a while randomly triggered. You just hear shink, shink, shink. And I was like, oh, and you would have to hide, but you wouldn't know if he would find you or not. So like sometimes you'd like hide like in the bathroom stall, and you'd be like standing there, and you of course I'd be holding my breath and real, and you might just stab right through it, kill you, or you might not. You don't know. You don't know. Randomness, baby. It's why dice are fun, right? It's why card draw is fun. All you cube pushers, you only want to have, complete deterministic gameplay. Scissors through your stomach. How about that? Not that I recommend that for anybody. That would just be in a video game, of course. Mike's not invited on Liz's show anymore.
No, but that was a perfect place to end this show because it was funny. Thank you so much for coming on, Deuce. I think this was actually a really fun walk down memory lane. It's got me.
No, I mean, yeah, you made me want to play some more games, which is maybe the only negative thing of this, because I got to go record something. I shouldn't be playing all the video games.
Can there ever be too many games? There cannot.
You're right. Well, thank you, Liz. It's been awesome talking to you.
Thanks.
As always.
Leave us some comments, guys. Happy gaming.
Bye.